News starts now.
Hope you're having a great evening, and thanks for joining us for KMIR News at 6. I'm Angela Monroe. The BNP Paribas Open continues today in Indian Wells, where all the top tennis players in the world are gathered to compete. That's where our Gina Lamont is live from the Indian Wells Tennis Garden. Gina, it's been a full week of action and some close calls, it sounded like today. Tell us a little bit of the scoop, and you've got a big interview for us.
That's absolutely true. In fact, one of the veterans of the WTA Tour, of course, is Venus Williams. She came into town, played her first match late this afternoon on center court. She was taking on number 12 seed Helena Jankovic, who has beaten her fairly consistently over the past couple of years. Well, Helena went up quickly 6-1. And then 4-1 in the second set. It didn't look like Venus was going to make the hour mark. And then she turned on the Jets and ended up taking the entire match in 3 sets. She won 1-6, 7-6, 6-1. We checked it. We caught up with Tracy Austin from Tennis Channel, who was the Tennis Channel's commentator for the match just a couple of minutes ago. And here's what she had to say about the comeback. All right, you just saw an amazing match. Were you surprised?
Wow, there were a number of changes of momentum. Venus Williams lost the first set in about 21 minutes. She only won 8 points, and she looked really compromised with her elbow. She couldn't hit her serve very hard. She also had her leg wrapped as well, so she wasn't moving very well. So you thought, okay, this is a match that she's not going to be able to get out of. She's not going to be able to win. And she went down 4-1 in the second set, and Jankovic was up 4-2, 40-15. You were thinking, can Venus get to the hour mark? And then somehow she flipped it around. Jankovic got nervous, and then Venus was playing incredibly well to take it in the third.
Yeah, you've been on both ends of that kind of game, that kind of match. What happens out there that can change the momentum so dramatically, one side of the court to the other?
I think Jankovic got nervous that she was closing out a match so easily against Venus Williams. And I think Venus really must have gotten warmed up. Her elbow must have gotten warmed up because she wasn't serving very hard at all in the first set, serving regularly in the 80s, 80 mile an hour. And then she finally was serving over 100 miles an hour by the end. And so it was really amazing to see Venus, even when she was down, she never showed any negative body language. And I felt that she always felt that she could get out of this match and come through with a victory.
So Venus Williams again with a big 3-set comeback, 1-6, 7-6, 6-1. Let's check in with Tennis Channel now for more of today's highlights.
Temperatures hit the 90s as the BNP Paribas Open reached its first weekend in the Coachella Valley. Hey guys, Tennis Channel's Jessica Vilchis with another special report for KMIR. After wrist surgery, Madison Keys played her first match of the 2017 season on Saturday. She faced Mariana Duque Marino for a place in the third round at Indian Wells. The American coasted to the opening set, taking it 6-1 and then raced to a 5-love lead in the second. But then nerves and a lack of match practice hit. Coach Lindsay Davenport tried to coax Madison across the finish line. But the Colombian put up a real fight before Keys closed it out 7-5 on her 8th match point. After the win, she told Tennis Channel's John Wertheim what it's like to be coached by the former world #1.
She's amazing just because you get to know that, you know, how she did things and how, you know, she handled things, and it's a really cool way of being coached because it's such a real level of coaching, and, you know, you can really take a lot of advice from her.
Elsewhere, John Isner also advanced. The former Georgia Bulldog came through in 2 tie breaks against Mikhail Kukushkin of Kazakhstan. The number 20 seed firing 23 aces in the victory that took just over an hour and a half on court. And there was an upset on Stadium 1. 7th seed Joe Wilfried Tsonga is packing his bags after going down in 3 sets to Italy's Fabio Fognini. The Frenchman came into Indian Wells after winning back-to-back titles in Rotterdam and Marseille. Fognini closing it out 6-4 in the deciding set. And don't forget, TC Plus and Tennis Channel's live coverage of the BNP Paribas Open hits the air daily at 10 a.m. I'm Jessica Vilchis.
And as you just saw, American John Isner did win his singles match today. He's playing doubles right now. And in just a couple of minutes, we'll stand up and have a conversation with the 6'10" tennis player. So that's coming up live from the Indian Wells Tennis Garden. In the meantime, Angela, back to you.
Thanks, Gino. I hope you're sitting down. Now on to other news in the Valley. 2 teenagers are looking at attempted murder charges. Palm Springs police announced the arrest in a unique way, holding an impromptu Facebook Live press conference. KMIR's Tyler Harrison has the new developments in this case.
2 suspects are behind bars and 2 juvenile victims are recovering following a double shooting on Thursday night on South Indian Canyon.
In a very quick time, be able to bring 2 suspects to justice.
Sandra Herrera of Desert Hot Springs and an unidentified 17-year-old male are now in police custody.
Both suspects are going to be charged with attempted murder. We are looking at gang enhancement charges on both of them. And the female, Herrera, is also being charged with possession of an unregistered firearm.
The gun believed to have been used in the shootings has been recovered, and both victims are expected to survive. Palm Springs police shared the developments with the community in their first Facebook Live press conference.
We're starting to use, again, social media as a means to communicate our information out and rather rapidly.
Even though the station is closed to the public over the weekend, Palm Springs police officers are still on the clock and live on Facebook.
People want the information, they want to know it, they want to feel safe, they want to know the police department's working, and what a better way to do it than through a social media platform.
Tyler Harrison, KMIR News.
1 person is dead and 2 others seriously injured after a 3-car crash in Mecca. It happened just before 7 this morning on Grapefruit Boulevard, north of Highway 111. 1 person died at the scene of the crash. 2 others were taken to the hospital with serious injuries. California Highway Patrol is investigating the cause, and is still investigating this crash. Firefighters rescue a woman on a Palm Desert hiking trail this morning. Firefighters respond to a report of a woman who'd collapsed near the area of Homestead Trail and the Hopalong Cassidy hiking trails. First responders hiked up to the woman's location, then brought her back down the trail. She was checked out by paramedics, but declined any further treatment. A Desert Hot Springs man found guilty in 2013 for his part in a 1994 fatal shooting will receive a new trial. 40-year-old Ian Davis Hudgens allegedly drove 2 men to a park where Emilio Avalos and Sergio Padilla shot and killed a 17-year-old. Avalos was sentenced to death, and Padilla's whereabouts are still unknown. Hudgens received life in prison without parole. But now an appeals court has ruled that the prosecutor in his case made an improper argument during the first trial, also citing the prosecutor's evidence connecting Hudgens to the murder, left much room for reasonable doubt of his guilt. Hudgens is due back in court April 14th. Coachella Valley residents are taking steps to raise money for education. Literally, they're walking. Desert Sands Educational Foundation held its 4th annual Hike for Education fundraising event today at Lake Cahuilla. It raises money to support programs in the Desert Sands Unified School District. They had a 5-mile, 3-mile, and 2-mile hikes, also a nature walk. All, as in 100% of the proceeds raised, goes straight to Desert Sands programs. No way to beat the heat like a Saturday spent splashing around. The return of high temperatures proved to be a nice pairing for the opening day of Wet n Wild. Families young and old took to the water park for a day of fun in the sun, thanks to this early 90-degree weather.
Pretty hot, but the water makes up. I just go down the slides.
Wet n Wild's now open during the weekends until they open daily for spring and the scorching heat in the desert. And with that, we are still at our high temperature today, taking a little while to cool down tonight. We topped out at 91, not too far actually from our record, which was 95 degrees set back in 1972. So only 4 degrees off from a record and 13 degrees away from what our seasonal high is for this time of year. Certainly feels like spring, maybe even late spring's already here, but spring's not until March 20th. Overnight lows dipping into the only 60s, so if you haven't already turned off that heat overnight, you're probably going to want to do it tonight. And for the next 3 days, it's only going to get hotter. As you can tell by the start of the work week, we're going to be well into the mid, almost starting to look at the high 90s. Could be looking for some record-setting days. We'll show you if there's a cool down in the 7-day forecast coming up in a few minutes. An Oregon man is under arrest for an alleged hate crime at a restaurant that specializes in Middle Eastern food. 52-year-old Jason Kendall has been charged with assault and intimidation after an employee at the restaurant was hit with a pipe. Authorities say that Kendall entered the Middle Eastern cuisine restaurant in Salem on Tuesday screaming, "Go back to your country, terrorist," and then attacked the employee. Kendall told arresting officers he saw a Saddam Hussein-looking guy inside the restaurant, quote, and saw a woman that he thought was being held as a slave. He's being held in jail on $65,000 bail. Today, the president fired a U.S. attorney who refused a call to resign, while the vice president hit the road to sell the Republican plan to replace the Affordable Care Act. NBC's Chris Pallone has the latest.
The president commenting Saturday after a California man jumped the fence at the White House just hours before.
Secret Service did a fantastic job. It was a troubled person.
The Secret Service stopped the intruder Friday night on the South grounds. For Trump, it was business as usual Saturday, hosting lunch at his Virginia golf club for members of his cabinet and staff.
The economy is doing very, very well. And generally speaking, we're doing very well. We're getting it back on track. We really had a mess. We had a mess. Believe me, it's getting straightened out. It's getting straightened out fast. And today we're also talking about health care.
Vice President Mike Pence was also talking health care in Kentucky on the road to sell Republicans' new plan to replace the Affordable Care Act.
Affordable Care Act, whatever it is that it goes by, has been truly devastating.
Show me what democracy looks like!
As Pence spoke, Obamacare supporters protested nearby.
I want to wait until there's a better program for the repeal to happen.
Late Saturday afternoon, Trump won his showdown with a federal prosecutor. The president originally asked Preet Bharara to stay on as U.S. Attorney for Manhattan. Bharara was an Obama appointee. Friday, the Justice Department told him and 45 other U.S. attorneys to resign and leave office. Bharara refused. He tweeted Saturday that he had been fired. It's customary for presidents to pick their own U.S. attorneys, but law enforcement sources tell NBC News the abruptness of Trump's decision, without new appointees ready to go, and after asking Bharara to stay on, caught many by surprise. Chris Pallone, NBC News.
Coming up next on KMIR News at 6, we'll take you back to the BNP Paribas Open with Gina Lamont, who has an interview with a tennis star.